3, hit it!
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome to today's Caffeine for the Soul. If you want to go deeper into the kinds of things I talk about each week on this podcast, we've got a couple of programs coming up that you might enjoy. If you go to michaelneill.org, you can find out information about our upcoming small group coaching, Infinite Potential, Infinite Possibilities in London, and a program with Dr. Robert Holden that I'll be co-teaching in Findhorn in Scotland called Becoming Yourself. And you can find out about both of them again at michaelneill.org. The Wisdom Within is the title of one of my favorite books in the field that's commonly known as the Three Principles, and past was known as psychology of mind, health realization. I often talk about it as the inside-out understanding. And I believe it's out of print, but it's by a man named Roger Mills and a woman named Elsie Spittle. And I never got to meet Roger, but I was fortunate enough to be mentored by Elsie. And what I love about the title of the book is there's something kind of magical that I found magical about the idea that there is a wisdom that is within me. Not a wisdom that I can go out and find, not a wisdom that will come to me with age, but a wisdom that is already mine. A wisdom within. And when the Scottish mystic Sid Banks, who a lot of this work is built around his teachings, when he would talk about spiritual wisdom, he would talk about it as the wisdom of the ages. And he would talk about how it was something that could just come in to you. That within your consciousness, all the wisdom that you could ever need, all the wisdom of the universe was available. And it's something that has always moved me, but for many years felt like the bit I didn't get. So when I came into this understanding, I came into it from a place of having been a high-functioning depressive. I'd gone through decades of anxiety and depression and mental health issues, and I did really well considering. And so when I first heard Sid Banks say, every human being is sitting in the middle of mental health, they just don't know it, it hit me like a ton of bricks, and I was overcome with well-being. I filled up with the sweetest feeling. And I came to see that that feeling was me. That feeling is who we all are. It's the feeling of life itself. But I would hear all these other people who had insights and epiphanies while learning about this stuff, and theirs was all about wisdom and the intelligence of life and the guidance that life had to, and that bit always felt mysterious to me. It's like, well, I get the well-being bit, but I don't get the wisdom bit. Until one of my mentors, a woman named Mavis Karn, said, well, wisdom is just that thing that comes to you, not from you. It's the answer that just suddenly comes fully formed into your mind, not all the information and data points that you figured out that might support an argument for one course of action over another. And I suddenly realized that in certain areas of my life, I have trusted that wisdom within, that inner knowing, that real-time responsive intelligence, without ever recognizing what it was that I was trusting, what it was that I was relying on. And the number one place where I have always followed it is when I teach. For whatever reason, nobody taught me this, and I don't consider that, well, I'm special. It's just for whatever reason. I figured out really early on that the best stuff that came out of me wasn't there the second before it found its way to my mouth. The best stuff that to this day comes through me, comes to me. And I rely on it so completely that I rarely have more than a couple of words jotted down on a piece of paper before I step out on a stage in front of an audience of thousands, or I step into a group of 5, or I sit down in front of the microphone. And it's not because I'm so clever. It's because I know that I don't know what to say. But I know that if I can find just the nicest feeling I can find and open my mouth, what comes through is invariably so cool that I want to take notes half the time. And if that sounds arrogant, I'm sorry. It doesn't feel arrogant because it just feels like how it works. And for me, the problem was I thought it was just how it worked when I taught, when I coached. And then I started to realize, oh, it's also how it works when I write. I've worked on or written, at this point I don't have it in my head, but let's say 16 books. And many of them have been bestsellers around the world. And people say, wow, you must really love writing. And the truth is, sometimes. But what I always love is reading what I wrote. Because it wasn't in there in form until it came out. I remember once sitting down with my literary agent and him saying, like, you know, we were having a meal together and we get on very well, but he was like, well, was there something you wanted to talk about? And I said, yeah, I feel like there's a book in me, a new book in me right now. And I'm hoping that you might get me drunk and ask me questions and it'll come out. Now, turns out getting drunk isn't an essential part of the process. But in my case, in that instance, it did quiet all my insecure thinking long enough for this something to come out of me. And if you're curious, that book became The Space Within, which is part of the Inside Out trilogy. But over time, I've come to see I can trust that same wisdom within. I can trust that what will come to me in real time is so perfect and so much better than the best stuff I come up with when I'm trying to plan out what I'm going to do and what I'm going to say. That I've learned I can rely on it in my marriage. I can rely on it with my kids. I can rely on it on the golf course. I can rely on it everywhere. And so can you. And in fact, it's not even a new skill, because I promise you, there are all sorts of places where you already rely on it. My guess is most of the time, you don't have to think about your breathing. You just breathe. You don't have to think about what you're going to say. You just speak. And we all have exceptions, right? We all have a place where, except for if it's a really important conversation, and then I need to plan it all out, except for if it's a job interview, and then I have to rehearse, except for if it's... But here's the thing. Except for where you think there's an exception, this real-time responsive intelligence will always come to you. And it comes to you as a thought. It comes to you, it just occurs to you. And perhaps the easiest distinction around it is that it comes to you, not from you. It doesn't come out of your brain. It comes into your brain. What comes out of your brain is your memory. What comes out of your brain is, a hodgepodge of ideas that you've picked up along the way. What comes to you, and if you let it through you, comes from the deeper mind. It comes from the intelligence of life, the intelligent energy that we all are, that we're made of. And the more we trust the wisdom within, the more obviously trustworthy we see it to be. And the more we rely on it, the more reliable we see that it is. And so if you want to play with it, just because we're talking about it, if you give it a minute, it will start to occur to you all sorts of places where you totally just rely on the wisdom within to figure out what you're going to do. Like, you don't stop and work out, okay, left foot, right foot, left foot. Like, there are all sorts of places where you already just trust what comes to you and through you. And the more you notice them, the more opportunities you'll find, the more opportunities you'll spot, where instead of trying to figure it all out in your head, you can just show up, find the best feeling you can find, and let things come. Have fun, learn heaps, happy exploring, and I'll talk with you soon.